There we go. So there's a couple of things that we're going to do at the beginning of this class session that we'll be doing at the beginning of all of our sort of future class sessions. The first thing is that there's a file that I want you all to download during this. So let's see, I'll go ahead and share my screen right now so that you can see where that file is while I'm talking. I'm sharing my screen, and right now I'm on the GitHub course webpage. And if you click on week 0 for our current week, there's this file, webpage.zip. So all of the that's like our lecture notes for today, basically. I'm going to be going over what's in that zip file. And some students will, it's sort of like up to you how you participate in lecture. You can either be kind of going along, looking at that file on your own computer as I'm doing it on my computer with my shared screen. And as I'm making some edits to the file, you can make the same edits to the file on your computer to get it like in real time. So that's certainly okay if you want to do that. I might, since we're all online right now, I might be going a little bit fast for everybody to keep up going back and forth that way. But it'll all be videoed, so you can go back, and if you missed like one of the key things that I did, go back and watch it again in the video. Alternatively, if it's easier for you just to focus on like watching me and what I'm doing, that's also a perfectly okay thing to do. But again, for those of you who just sort of joined us, I'm currently on our course webpage on GitHub, and there's this file webpage.zip. If you click right here, it'll take you to this page, and then there's a button over in the right-hand corner that says download. That's how you can get the zip file. And that's sort of like the lecture notes that I'm going to be going over today in class. So while we're doing that, I have a couple of announcements as well. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. The first is that we have some guests today who have joined us. So Ben is the mentor at the QCL, who is sort of in charge of our class. So if ever you have questions about CS40, you can go talk to Ben, and I'll let him introduce himself right now.
Hey everyone. So my name is Ben, and I'm going to be the head mentor for CS40 or Math40, or whatever one you ended up signing up for. So very briefly, my background is in math specifically, but I recently took up programming and took Mike's 181 course last semester. It was really interesting. I'm much more self-taught, so I haven't gone through the full typical CS sequence, but I've learned a lot of the kind of important parts about programming through just self-study and kind of just on the job. So I worked over the summer with Mike on doing some cool machine learning tasks. If you're ever curious about that, feel free to ask me or email me later. I'm happy to share what we're doing. So in regards to how you actually would schedule me or reach out to me, at the moment, I'm not actually sure how the QCL is doing it this year. In the past, we have done it through appointment schedules just online. There should be a general email sent out very soon to all the students that will give you very clear instructions on how to speak to us and how to schedule appointments. But they will generally follow a kind of one-on-one tutoring session type deal where you'll schedule a time in for me, and basically we'll just hop onto a Zoom call together, or it might be on Discord. Or we have to look into that. I'm not sure. But it'll be on some platform that you'll know ahead of time, and basically we'll go through either if you have problems that you want to work on through homework, or if you just have general concept questions or test studying, whatever it is, I'm a resource here for you to use. So, as long as you're booking me during one of my available times, there's not a question that I'm not willing to help you work through or answer. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to email me. My email is bfigueroa20@cmc.edu. So yeah, that's about all I wanted to say.
Can you type that into the chat, Ben?
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Does anybody have any questions for Ben about like the QCL or anything more broadly? Okay. So yeah, thank you, Ben, for introducing yourself. In this class, we're also going to have a couple of TAs for the class who are not part of the QCL, but have been that I've just sort of hired specifically for this class. In the past, often I found that, like, especially the intro programming course, students really benefit from having other students who have done a lot of programming before to bounce ideas off of. So that's why we're going to have sort of extra TAs in this class, and they'll be introducing themselves in later sessions as well. Okay, so that's one announcement. Two other announcements are that I had a couple of great questions that people asked since our first class. I wanted to just mention those. One was asking if you have to use VS Code for all of the assignments in this class. And the answer is no. You're allowed to use whatever like tools you want for any part of this course. So similar, you won't have to use Firefox. You could use Chrome or Safari, but there will be points in the course where I will do things with all of these tools, and you'll have to be able to figure out, if you're not using those tools, how to do them yourself. I won't be able to help you. So things like Firefox and VS Code, those are strong recommendations, but not requirements. The other question was about more specifics about like the dates of programming assignments. And so I'm going to share my screen again. And I'm back on the course webpage, and I'm going to scroll down to the part where I listed all of the projects and what they're going to be. And I now have some sort of approximate due dates for when each of these homeworks will be due. I will guarantee that the due date will not be earlier than these dates, but if there's, as we come to these dates, lots of people are asking for an extension, I may extend the dates out a little bit. So you'll notice that every assignment's roughly 2 to 3 weeks apart. The difference is this last one with the Twitter clone. This will take place of your final. We're not going to have an explicit final in this course. It's just this is your final project, and so that's due during finals week. And you'll have a little bit more time to work on it than you will for the other projects. In terms of labs, it's just there's one lab a week that will be due on Sunday of that week. So we'll on Thursday sort of formally introduce like what the lab is. You can go look at it right now. It's already posted. And then you'll have probably many students will be able to finish it during the lab period of that 2-hour period. But if it takes you a little bit longer, that's okay. You have until Sunday evening. And that'll be every week, one lab that's due on Sunday. So those were great questions. Are there any other questions that people had about like anything administrative about the course at this point?
Yeah, me, sorry. You said in the syllabus that we grade our own quizzes. How does that work?
Yeah, so when we actually, the quizzes will be when we get to the Python portion of the class, and when we get to that, that's when we'll discuss it. But basically, the format of the quiz is going to be, I'm going to give you some code, and you're going to try to predict what the code is going to do, and then you'll grade it by actually running the code and seeing if your prediction matches what happened. And so you'll be able to, it's the sort of thing that you can continue doing multiple times until you get everything correct if you'd like to. Great question. Any other questions at this point? Okay. So today, roughly what the format of most of our classes is going to look like is we're going to do somewhere between like 40 minutes to an hour of me presenting material. And then the last portion of the class will be small problems for you to work on and have like ask more specific questions if you didn't get a chance to ask those during lecture. These problems are not going to be things that are graded at all. They're not things that you have to turn in, but they're just like exercises to make sure that you're understanding the material that we covered today. And so I mentioned before on the course webpage, so I'm going to share my screen again. There's that file that I've uploaded. If you go into week 0, this webpage.zip file, this contains the sort of the lecture notes that we're going to be going over today. And those small little assignments was just will involve you modifying this webpage in some small ways. So if you haven't already downloaded that, I recommend you go to the course webpage and download it now. Inside of this zip file, there are 3 files. So I'm going to now switch over to VS Code. There are 3 files in that zip file, and I have them sort of already loaded over here on VS Code. There's this index.html file, and again, that's sort of the default name of your web page. Is always index.html. And then I have a more specific web page called kingkillerchronicle.html. And then I have this folder image, and inside of that folder is a picture. If you were to go over to Firefox, and so here I'm in the where I've extracted that web page zip file. You can see it's still those same 2 HTML files plus this image file. And if I click on those links, so say click on index.html, it would take me to a web page that looks like this. So it's a web page about cool fantasy books. I like reading fantasy books. And it doesn't look very fancy at this point, but that's okay. We'll talk about how to make it look fancy later. And there's also a web page specifically about one of these book series called the Kingkiller Chronicle. And this is what that web page looks like. So what we're going to do today is talk more detail about HTML, and specifically both of these, between these 2 pages, 99% of HTML is used. So that's why I've created these 2 pages for our lecture for today. So if we look at index.html, so this is a relatively small HTML page, but it has sort of all the key components of what every HTML page has. So every HTML page starts with this tag HTML and ends with /HTML. Remember that the things inside of the angle brackets are called tags in HTML, and this tag we would call an opening tag because it does not have a slash. This tag we would call a closing tag because it does have a slash. Throughout the whole course, but especially today, I'm going to introduce a lot of vocabulary. So like opening tag and closing tag is new vocabulary I'm introducing. But I'm never going to say like try to quiz you on vocabulary. So you don't have to necessarily try to memorize the definitions of all of these words. Instead, these are things that you just want to like sort of become familiar with how to use them in practice and know what I'm saying when I say something like an opening tag. So if ever I do say something that maybe you haven't heard before, again, feel free to either interrupt me in the middle of mid-sentence, totally okay, or you can type a question into the chat and I will see it there as well, and I'll answer it when I'm at a good breaking point. Any questions so far? Okay, so we have every web page has this HTML tag. This is an opening tag, this is a closing tag. And then every web page also has what's called the head tag, which is like the header information of the web page. The things inside of the head tag do not actually appear on the web page. This is for only for information to say like help Google or other search engines understand what your web page is about. So most head sections are very simple, although for say the New York Times, they have a very complicated head section so that Google gets their page perfect. And then there's this body tag, and the things that actually appear on the web page go inside of the body tag. So all of these things that I have right here, if we were to go back to the web page right here, and I'll go back to the index page, you can see cool fantasy books up top, and then menu, and a couple titles, and then 2 paragraphs down here. Back over here. This is what's causing that title to appear at the very top. And then here's the menu, and those 2 paragraphs is where they appear down here. At this point, there's a lot of HTML tags included in this web page that we haven't talked about. So I haven't mentioned header, h1, nav, ol, li, all of these things. And so it's okay and actually expected if you don't know what those are. Totally okay. One of the things that's very common in programming is that you'll have to work with a lot of, say, HTML documents that have HTML tags that you've never seen before. And that's because, again, there are hundreds to thousands of these HTML tags, and nobody has them all memorized. Most people who do HTML regularly know, say, the like 40 or 50 that are the most common, used 90% of the time, but every web page has some that are different that we'd have to look up what they mean. So you just have to sort of get familiar with not knowing exactly what everything does on a web page. But these ones we're going to explain exactly what they all are now. So starting with this H1 tag. H stands for header, and H1 is the biggest header on a web page. That's like the main title of a web page should always be inside of an H1 tag. So cool fantasy books, if I go back over here, cool fantasy books. And you can see that this, because it's the header of the web page, it's highlighted in big text, and so it draws your attention. It's the main header. It's common for the thing inside of H1 to also be the same thing that's inside of this title up here, but it's not required. What this title does is, so on my computer, it actually does nothing. On your computers, if you have, say, Firefox open, up at the top, there's probably a spot that says like the name of the web page that you're looking at. That's what the title tag affects. So it's common for both of these two things to be the same, but it's not required. This header tag is, it actually doesn't affect anything in the layout of the HTML. This is what we would call a semantic tag, that it only is for describing, like helping the humans who are reading the HTML. Everything that goes inside of the header tag is part of the header, the top of the web page. So typically people will have their H1 tag inside of here. You might also have, say, an image tag or something else inside of here. But this tag does nothing. Similarly, this nav tag does nothing. It just stands for navigation. And so it's common for people to put like a menu of here are all the web pages that you can link to from here inside of a nav tag. But this tag by itself does nothing. Similarly, the article tag by itself does nothing. It's just a useful way to organize like the main contents of a web page, put it inside of article. Here, OL stands for ordered list. This is a tag that you use when you want to have a list of items that appear just one after each other in your web page. So in my fantasy books web page, I wanted to have a list of all of the different books that I like. And so I used the OL tag to make that list. And then each item in the list is surrounded by LI tags, LI for list item. So LL ordered list, LI list item. Again, you don't have to try to memorize any of these abbreviations, but it might help you just kind of remember what some of them mean if you know what the abbreviations stand for. So let's go back to the web page now. First, notice we have menu and then 4 things inside of the ordered list. And coming back over to the web page, we have menu and the 4 things inside of the ordered list. Lastly, articles. I've created 2 paragraphs. The P tag stands for paragraph. So this is one paragraph, and this is another paragraph inside of this HTML page. And we said before in our quick introduction to HTML last time that new lines are what we call white space. So spaces, tabs, the enter key, none of that matters to HTML. The only formatting that matters is these tags. So whenever you want to create new lines between parts of your document, you put it around these P tags. And so there's 2 paragraphs here, this tag and this tag, and that corresponds to this paragraph and this paragraph. Any questions so far? Okay, so one of the things that I would really want to drive home throughout this whole class, this class session, but like this entire semester, is like, what does it mean to be a computer scientist? And I'm really emphasizing that scientist word. And what scientists do is we conduct experiments. So we want to know like how the world works. So we design an experiment and actually do it. If you're a biologist, an experiment might take you a month or a year to complete. Same for a physicist or a chemist. But in computer science, experiments take us seconds to complete. And so in this class, you will be doing like hundreds to thousands of experiments every time you sit down at a computer. So I'm going to do a real quick experiment right now. The experiment is, what would happen if I delete these 2 tags? I can make a prediction maybe about what will happen. My prediction is that HTML, even though we have this white space here, even though we have this new line here, HTML is supposed to ignore that new line. And so my prediction is that this will now appear as 1 paragraph, even though it looks like 2 paragraphs. So let's save this. File save. Come back over here, refresh this document, and my prediction was true. It is now, in fact, 1 single paragraph. And the vast majority of web development or programming in general is not like sitting down and meticulously planning things out. It's just saying, hey, what's going to happen when I make this change? And keep making small changes like this until we get to what we want. So that's our first computer science experiment. And you can see that's a very simple experiment, one that you could easily do by yourself. Okay, so these tags are all, let's see. So this is our index.html page. Now I'm going to go to our King Killer Chronicle page. So this is one of my favorite fantasy books, the King Killer Chronicles. And so that's why I chose to make a page specifically about that. Here's the HTML for that page. And you can see that it has the same basic format as the index.html page had. Still starts with HTML. And then we have this header section. Right now, the header just has a title in it. Whoops, I must have clicked the wrong button. So we still have this header section that still has a title. And we still have a body, but now the body has a lot more things inside of it than it did before. Parts of the body are the same. So we still have this H1. And the H1 is now different than what it was in index.html. But notice that inside of my H1 and inside of my title are still the same thing. I still have this nav section. And this nav section is actually exactly the same as it was for the index.html. But all of this stuff down here now is all totally new. And this is all stuff that's specific to the about the King Killer Chronicle book. So if I go back to Firefox, open up the King Killer Chronicle, you can see that here's the title, and all of this stuff is the same. But then this article menu is different. There's an image, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff down here. So we're going to talk about some of those differences now. The first difference that I want us to talk about is this image tag. So image tag is different than all of the other HTML tags that we've seen so far, and it's different in two ways. The first way is that you notice that there's other things inside of the image tag besides just the tag itself. So this right here, this very first thing that appears in the angle brackets, that's called the tag. And then this is called an attribute. So I'm going to go ahead and type this out so you can see it. Tag, and then attribute. So this src is the name of this attribute. And then this big string right here is the value of the attribute. And this is a general format for how HTML tags can be formatted. You must always have a tag, but some tags can also have attribute equal value inside of them. So for the image tag, in order for us to know which image should be loaded, it has an attribute that tells us. And inside of VS Code, one of the reasons that people like VS Code is that it'll give you these sort of hints about what all of these attributes and tags do if you hover over it with your mouse. So src is the source of the image, the particular location where the image should be taken from. And so this is just happens to be the name of the image that that I downloaded from the internet, and so that's what this image looks like right here. So that's the first difference about the image tag, is it has this attribute. The second difference is, notice that it ends with a slash over here. So here, this tag OL does not end with a slash, and that's because an ordered list has some contents inside of it. So we have ordered list, and then all of this stuff appears inside of the ordered list. And then there's a closing ordered list tag. The image tag, though, appears only by itself. It never has a closing image tag. So in order for the web browser, in order for Firefox to know that there is no closing tag, we put this slash right here, and that tells Firefox there is no closing tag. Look like Maria, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, isn't the slash supposed to be after like the word tag in the second sentence, I guess?
Let's see, when you say the second sentence, I'm not sure what you're referring to. So there's
Oh,
line
like
numbers over here.
the template thing that you wrote.
This that I wrote right here?
Yeah.
So this is a great question. The question is that over here, I have a slash, and that slash, the question is, why is there not a slash, say, right here? And the answer is that the slash is because here there's an opening image tag, but there is no closing image tag. There's exactly one image tag. For this example tag, there's an opening tag right here, but there's a closing tag right here. So when you have a closing tag, you include a slash. When you do not have a closing tag, the slash goes over here. Maybe another example will help. There's a tag called BR. BR is similar to the paragraph tag. It adds a new empty line between text. And there is no closing tag for the BR tag. So when you use the BR tag, you use it like this.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so this
okay,
slash
I got it. Okay.
is not related to the fact that we're using an attribute. The slash is related to the fact that there is no closing tag. So it's a great question.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Okay. So all tags are allowed to, all tags are allowed to have as many attributes as you might want them to have. And so the image tag, besides specifying a source, It's also common to specify what's called the alt attribute, ALT. And alt stands for alternate. And if we hover over, it'll tell us what this tag, or sorry, what this attribute does. But the reason this attribute was introduced was so that people who say maybe, for example, a blind user of a computer who can't actually look at the image, their computer might be reading the text of the web page to them. And this alt is like, what should the computer read to that person as a description of the image. So in this case, it's an image from the book, from the cover of a book. So it's the cover of the first King Killer Chronicle book. This is sometimes called an accessibility attribute for HTML because it's specifically designed to help people who are, for whatever reason, have to view the web page in a reduced mode. The most obvious example of why that would be is like somebody who's blind and they can't actually look at the image. But even people who are not blind benefit from having these alt tags. So for example, if you have your cell phone plan and you don't have an unlimited cell phone plan for data, you only have, say, like 1 GB per month, maybe you have your web browser set to not automatically download all of the images on the web page because images take a lot of bandwidth. And instead, your web browser will display the alt text. So this is called the alt text. Whoops. This string is called the alt text. And your web browser can display that, so you can choose whether or not to download it to save bandwidth. Another attribute of the image tag is called the title text. Title. And this, well, let's see, this is title text. And I will save this and we'll just see what happens in the web browser. If I go back over to Firefox, and now I refresh this web page, and I take my mouse and I hover over the image, you can see that that little message appears. And so the title text of an image is what appears when a mouse hovers over the image. Are there any questions about the image tag or anything else we've talked about?
I have a question about, I don't know whether you mentioned that before. It's the pictures, the images link. Where is the link from?
So this right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. So what you put in the source is the location of the image itself. So in this case, if we go over back to Firefox, and so I've opened up the web page folder that contains all the documents. So it contains my 2 HTML files, and then it also has this folder img, and inside of that folder, zoom in, is this file right here. And so what I put into the name of this value for the src attribute is how to find that image from the location where the HTML file is. So first go inside the img folder and then go to the name of the file.
But how does the computer find the img folder?
So the question is like, how does it know which img folder to look at? And the answer is that so inside of the folder that I'm working in, inside of the folder that has my HTML files, is this img folder. So because I'm looking at this HTML file right here, this is the place that it's going to look for this img folder.
So we do not need to download the image, but just directly use
Yes.
the image online?
The image is already included in that webpage.zip file.
Okay.
Can you can you put in the web link instead of footer?
Yeah, so this is a good question. This image does not exist on the internet. This image is not being downloaded, say, from a web page and then being shown that. This image is on your computer in the same way that all of these HTML files, they are on your computer. They're not uploaded on a server somewhere. Everything that we're working on right now, it all exists just on your computer. So when you came over here and downloaded the webpage.zip file, that's where everything is. It is possible also to put in a full URL that would say like http://google.com/whatever. And we'll see some examples of that later. But it's not required. Yeah, I think the best way to sort of understand like what are valid things to be putting into this SRC attribute is, again, really just experimenting with it. Trying to put something in there, see if it works, and if it doesn't work, keep trying different things until you get something to work. One of the common pitfalls that that people have with this is what's called case sensitivity. So I'll write it out, case sensitivity. And in some computers, say .jpg equals .jpg, where lowercase equals uppercase. And in some computers, .jpg is not equal to .jpg. And a lot of students end up getting into problems when something works on your computer, but it doesn't work on somebody else's computer because of this issue. So my recommendation is to always make all of your files 100% lowercase, and both inside of your code when you're talking about them, and in like whatever you actually name the file, make them all 100% lowercase, and that will avoid this problem completely. Let's see. So I have right now this extra text in my web page that I don't want to be displayed on the web page, but I want to leave it here in case somebody wants to look at it in the future. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a comment to the code. A comment is something that appears in the HTML file, but Firefox will ignore. And a comment in HTML looks like this. So it starts with a tag, but then the tag is the exclamation mark dash dash. And then we end it with dash dash bracket. And so you can see that this is highlighted in green in VS Code to indicate that this is a comment. And we'll notice now that if I save this and come over to our web page and reload it, here's still the image, but nothing got displayed right above the image because all of this text was just in a comment. You can see that I have another comment down here. This comment explains that all of the text on this web page I just copied and pasted from Wikipedia, and it explains why that's a perfectly legal thing to do. Wikipedia is what's called a Creative Commons licensed text, and one of your pre-lab YouTube videos for tomorrow will explain in detail exactly what the Creative Commons is. But the short summary is that it's okay, perfectly legal to copy and paste things that are Creative Commons onto your web pages. It is not legal to do that if the web page is not Creative Commons. You'll also notice that this tag right here, nothing appeared on the HTML web page. So this tag appears right after the image. And if I go back to the HTML web page, you can see that it didn't do anything right after the image down here. And that's because HTML ignores tags that it's never seen before. It ignores tags that it doesn't know about. This tag doesn't exist. It doesn't do anything. And so Firefox, when it sees something that it's never seen before, doesn't know what to do with, it just ignores it. So it's perfectly okay to have sort of made up tags in an HTML document. And in fact, this article tag is one of those made up tags. It started off as just something that people like to do to organize their HTML documents, and then it just became a thing that now everybody does. Okay, so we saw before there's the H1 tag. So if we scroll or go back to Firefox, the H1 tag is like the main title of your document up here, but then you can also have H2 tags. So this plot summary and this characters are both H2 tags, and these are like subheadings, heading level 2 instead of heading level 1. So we have this H2 tag, plot summary, and then if we scroll down a little bit more, this H2 tag of characters. There are 6 levels of H tags, H1, 2, H3, H4, H5, and H6. Each one just gets a little bit smaller, and each one's just a subheading of the previous one. Most web pages only use H1, some use H1 and H2. I think I very rarely see something that uses H3, and I've never seen something that uses more than that. Then we have these same paragraphs. And down here, this one is a little bit interesting. It's a table. So we'll talk about how to create tables in HTML next. Before we do that, are there any questions about anything so far? Okay, so we'll go take a look at what the table actually looks like. And so it's this thing at the very bottom down here. And you can see at this point, it's not very pretty looking. Remember, HTML only describes what's on the web page. And we'll talk next week about CSS, which actually says how do you make the web page and make it look pretty. So this is an ugly table, but that's okay. It's a table. And that's all HTML can do for us, is get us the table. Each row of the table has a TR tag. So TR standing for table row. And then each element, sort of each column in the table, has either a TH tag or a TD tag. TD stands for table data. So that's what you use for a normal data entry. TH stands for table header. So that's what you use typically just on the first row of a table, but some tables might have a header at the bottom or in the middle as well. And so here, name and description are the headers of the table. There's name, there's description, and then each row has the name of one of the characters and their description. So there's these 3 rows and 3 rows in the table. One of your tasks for the sort of the end of lecture tasks will be to extend this table to contain a 3rd column and a 5th row, just to get some practice with adding new things into tables. You don't have to make those tasks like meaningful in any way. You can just create a new column that's like a junk column and make it say everything is junk, or you can make them actually meaningful. Let's see, I didn't catch who just raised your hand, but go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so how do we actually display like the code in a Firefox page?
So that's a great question. How do you actually like look at the code? So right now I'm inside of the VS Code program. So when you, in order to get here, you have to open up VS Code and then just file open to open whatever file it is that you want to look at. And then if you want to like look at the results of the code, you go over to Firefox and type in the location in Firefox. For everybody's system, that will look a little bit different depending on which version of Windows you have or which version of Mac OS. So if you can't quite figure that out right now, I can help you sort of one-on-one with that later. Good question. Any other questions so far? Okay. So the key thing about HTML documents, like the most important thing about HTML documents, is that they can link to each other. So right now, if I go back over to my web page, I have no way of like going from one web page to the other. So if I'm on my main web page, there's no way for me to click on anything to take me to a different web page. And we obviously want to be able to do that. We want to be able to click on things to go in different areas. So we're going to talk about now how to do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this part right here, the Kingkiller Chronicle, which corresponds to this part right here of the actual rendered web page. And I'm going to make it a clickable hyperlink. The tag that makes something a hyperlink is called the A tag. A. And the location of where I want it to go is going to be, the attribute is href, and the value will be the name of the file. Everything inside of the tag, what we'd call the contents of the tag, is what's going to actually be the things that you can click on. So I'm going to want to be able to click on Kingkiller Chronicle to send me to the other page. So at first, I'm going to leave this href blank. We're just going to see what happens. Again, we're computer scientists, so we run experiments. We just try things out to see what happens. So I save this, and I come back over to Firefox and refresh this. And you notice that now this Kingkiller Chronicle part here is in purple, so I can click on it. And if I click on it, you notice that it doesn't do anything. So I'm clicking and clicking and nothing's happening. I stay at the same web page. The reason for that is because this href attribute is blank. So it doesn't know where to go when I click on it. In order to make it go to this other file, I have to type in the name of that file. So the name of that file is kingkillerchronicle.html. Another one of the nice features of VS Code is that it will, it knows when you're typing in the name of a file, and it will automatically give you some options of what files that could possibly be. And so I'm just going to click on this, and it will put in the rest of that file name for me. Let's save that, file, save, and come back over to here, to the web page, refresh that. And now when I click on this link, it takes me to the Kingkiller Chronicle page. If I press back, it'll go back to the original page. So forward, back, click the link, and back. One of the things to notice is that, so here on my main page, I've added a link for the Cool Fantasy books, but that link does not exist on the Kingkiller Chronicle page. Even though it's the same menu, I only edited the index.html file. It did not edit the kingkillerchronicle.html file. And that's why there's no link right here. I probably do want to also have links on this spot as well. And in order to do that, I would have to not just edit the index.html page, but also edit the Kingkiller Chronicle page. Going up here to the menu, and then adding links here as well. Are there any questions about the A tag and creating these hyperlinks? Okay. So this is sort of one way to sort of create URLs, ways to reference files. And this is the same way that we did it with that image file as well. We just typed in the name of the file right here. And then we could do that because these files are just on our local machine. But yeah, there was great questions earlier about what if we want to link to something that's not on our local machine, but link to another website way out on the internet somewhere. So let's add another link example that does that. We'll do it right here. We'll make the CS40 class right here, link to our actual course webpage. And the way you do that is you just have to 040, type in the URL of the web page, and it has to be the entirety, the full URL, including this part right here. This, whether it's HTTP:/ or HTTPS://. This part must be included. And this part is how Firefox knows that this link goes to another location somewhere else on the internet and not to something on your own computer. So I'm going to make that encompass /a, oops, like this. And now I will save this. And there should be, when I go back to Firefox, a button on CS40. So let's go back to this web page and notice that the button hasn't appeared yet. Every time you make a change to your HTML files, you always have to press the refresh button in order for Firefox to register those changes. Now, when I press this button here, it takes me to this other web page. So I want to do another real quick experiment, and that's what's going to happen if I forgot to include that HTTPS://. What's going to happen? And let's save this. File, save, and come back to Firefox. Remember, I have to refresh every time. And now when I click this, it can't find the web page. We just get an error message. The reason is, again, because that HTTPS is necessary in order for it to know that it has to go online and look to another web page. Without it, it thinks there's a file called this on my local computer, and I don't have a file with this name, and so that's why it's giving an error saying it can't find the file. Are there any questions about that? About anything we've talked about so far? Okay, so that's really everything there is to know about HTML, actually. There are these tags that do things. The tags have names, they have attributes, and they have values. And it's just a matter of combining those things together in cool ways to make cool web pages. Most of what makes doing that hard is doing the styling correctly. And we'll talk about that styling next week on Monday when we talk about the CSS language. Again, HTML is just the content. CSS is how you make it look pretty, how you give it good styles. And that's the harder part of making web pages, is making those styles correct. So at this point, that's like the end of the main lecture component for today. And we have 2 small tasks for you all to work on and make sure that you know how to do. These tasks will, if you complete them now, they'll make the lab tomorrow significantly easier to do because they're essentially required for completing the lab tomorrow. But again, these tasks are not graded at all. They're just a way for you to check your own knowledge about what we talked about today. So that first task is, I have it written down here, adding a new row and column to this table. Again, you don't have to care about the contents of those. It doesn't have to make sense when you read it. Just make sure that it's getting displayed correctly as a table when you view it in Firefox. That's the first task. And then the second task is to create a new HTML file for one of these other books. Make sure that you're able to create a link that will take you to that file and that you're able to include an image in that HTML file. So I'll write that out so that it's all in one place. This is task 1. And then the second task is create a new HTML file for one of the other books, add an image, and add links between the files. So that will make sure if you're able to do that, then you've understood everything you need to know about today's lecture. So the remainder of the time that we have together, class ends at 3:45, so 15 minutes. I will be available for one-on-one questions, whether it's about this particular task or how to get things set up on your computer. And I'm just going to, if you raise your hand in Zoom, I'll be sort of like going down the list of the order that the hands are raised in order to help people out on these tasks. I guess before I do that though, are there any questions about what you're supposed to do for the next 15 minutes? Okay, then go ahead and get started, and I'll be available for answering your questions as you have them. Let's see. Yilin, is this a new question or a previous question with your hand raised?
Oh, it's a new question.
Okay, yeah, how can I help?
Can you go back to the HTML page?
Sure.
Like, I downloaded the file and it's now in my computer, but I don't know like how to open that using Visual Studio Code.
Probably the best way for us to work through this is if you share your screen, and I can tell you like what part of your screen to click on.
Okay, sure. Oh, you disable attendance screen sharing.
Sorry, there you go. You should be able to now.
Oh, okay. This is I downloaded that in the web page.
Okay. Have you installed VS Code?
Yeah.
Can you open up VS Code?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and so right now you're only sharing your File Explorer. You're not sharing the VS Code part of your screen.
Do I need only share my VS Code page?
I guess my recommendation is sharing the entire desktop, but it needs to at least be the VS Code.
Okay, I can share.
Okay.
Do you see that?
Yep. And now, so in the very top left of your screen, there's the file menu. And so if you go to open.
Open.
And now here, go to the web page and open up the files.
Oh, okay.
And now every edit you make here will display in Firefox.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So if you want to do something with HTML, but you don't know the tag related to it, so how do you search for the tag?
So the question is basically, how do you discover new HTML tags to do things?
Yeah.
That's a great question. The answer is that there's sort of like, well, let's see. So there are some web pages that will, they just have a list of here's all of the HTML tags. So you can go through those and just look at new ones if you're just trying to like see things in general. So the course textbook, if you go to the course webpage, and the author's name is Shay. It's called HTML and CSS. They introduce a lot of like sort of specific tasks that you want to do. So if you want to create a pretty table, they show you all the different options for creating a table. Most of those options end up involving like CSS, so how to style the tables. So that's why we haven't had any reading from the textbook yet. We'll talk about that on Monday. But that's a good resource. Otherwise, people just, like if you see something cool on a web page, then you can sort of just look at the HTML of a web page to see how they do it. And that's, again, something that on Monday we'll sort of explore how to do. So it's probably not a super satisfying answer, but I guess wait until Monday is the best answer I have for that.
Do we show you after we're done with like the first task, or do we move on to the second one?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for all of these tasks, you don't have to show them to me. If you have a particular question about it, I'm not sure if you did it correctly, I'm happy to look at it, but I'm not keeping track of it. You don't have to get it checked off. You can just go on to the next task when you're finished, and if you finish all of the tasks, then you're done for the class.
Professor, what was it? Can you repeat the second task?
Sure, let me bring it back up on my screen here. So here's the second task, to create a new HTML file for one of the other books. And inside of that HTML file, you should have at least an image and links to the other files.
Thank you.
Yep. So I'll go ahead and add this to the chat. That'll be that way everybody can have access to it still.
So I just want to make sure that the head and header tag are are can see on the web, but yeah.
Yeah, so everything inside of the head tag is what we call metadata about the web page. So they're things that are not displayed in the web page itself, but just describe the contents of the web page. So if, for example, you do a Google search and like it lists all the titles of web pages before you click on them, those titles come from the title tag of your web page. On most people's computers, like Firefox is also configured to display the title in, say, like the tab section of the web page. But it's not required. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Professor, can you like repeat how you find, like how you find the image link? Because when I download the image, I cannot find the page that you showed us on the website of that file. I only have in my computer.
So yeah, the key thing when you download the image, you'll Firefox always asks you where do you want to save the image to. You want to make sure that you save it into that IMG folder that that's inside of your web page folder. If it's saved somewhere else, then Firefox won't be able to access it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you don't have to, but if you'd like to share your screen, then I can do that in more detail with you. This is one of the things that's different for everybody depending on whether you're Windows or Mac, and it depends on the exact particular version of each operating system.
Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so after I click download, it shows this page.
Okay, yeah, so for this, what we need to do is we need to extract the zip file. So if you click on the open with, and then okay.
It comes, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and then, yeah, so that's the, looks like you've probably maybe done this step once before because you have a web page and a web page 2 file listed. If you, yeah, so now if you double click on the IMG, yeah, you can see that's where the image file is actually located. If you wanted to get a new image file from the internet, you would have to find that file, right click on it, go to save as, and then make sure that you save as in that particular location.
So when after I download a new picture, I right click that and save that?
Yeah, so again, yeah, this is something that I can't show on my computer because this is different for everybody. But if you go on the internet and find a image, I can walk you through the steps of saving it.
Yeah.
Like images.google.com to get the Google image search.
Search with Google.
So if you click on images and say like type Harry Potter. So now this, what we're looking at is an HTML file with a lot of image tags inside of it. If you right click on any of these images, and then you can see there's this option, save image as. Now, in that where location, you have to make sure that where location is that IMG folder inside of web page. Yeah, so double click on web page, then double click on IMG, and now press save.
Okay, if I want to add this to the one, I just change the name of this to the image that I just downloaded.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Professor, I'm not
Yes.
sure why the tags aren't working. Like they're acting as like a text, like a normal text. They're not like blue or anything. And like the page is not opening as a web page, but like
Sure.
as a
If
text.
you share your screen with me, I can take a look at the code and help you figure out what's going wrong.
Is it shared right now?
Yep, I can see it. So the first thing that I notice is if you look on line 15, the closing tags, the slash goes at the very beginning. So that should be slash
Oh.
body instead of body slash.
Like this.
Yep. And so
Okay.
if you look on line 7 as well, I think
Okay.
it should be instead of h1 slash at the very end, it should be slash h1. So now let's go ahead and save that and try to open it up in Firefox. And right now we can't see your Firefox, so you'll have to change how you're sharing the screen.
Okay. Let me change that. Sure. Okay, it's like this. It's not like
Okay.
a web page.
Yeah, so the first thing that I want to point out is we want to avoid the capital letters whenever possible. So it would be better in the future to call it lowercase Harry Potter rather than with the uppercase. And all of these HTML files, it's customary to make them end in the .html extension. So if you called it harrypotter.html, that would
like rename it.
Yep.
Okay. So .html.
Yep.
Okay.
And yeah, that's okay. And so now you should be able to open it in Firefox.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's working. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we're almost at the end of the class right now. There's just 1 minute left. So my recommendation is that you continue doing these these tasks just so that you're staying on track with everything. But again, there's not, we're not going to be collecting them. It's not required. And I also want to, I'm going to share my screen again for one last reminder. I'm going to go to the course webpage, and everybody, I asked you to create GitHub accounts last time, and now I'm going to ask you to watch this course repository. So if you go to GitHub, press this button up here, watch. That will help you get all of the announcements that happen about the course. So make sure that you're watching this repository just by pressing this button up here. And that's it for today. The recording will be available on YouTube this evening. So I will see you all tomorrow during our lab session.